So a couple days ago, I did a video about 8 prospects who have killed their draft stock so far in 2024. The video ended up doing really well, and you guys left a lot of suggestions for who should be in a part 2. That is exactly what we are going to do today, because I'm going to talk about 8 more big-time prospects or big-time players who have lost their draft stock in 2024 for multiple and various reasons. But before we get started, if you're a big fan of college football, be sure to subscribe to the channel, leave a like if you want to support today's video, and let me know what player, team, topic, or situation I can cover next. Now let's get started and talk about 8 more players whose stock has been killed in 2024. Okay, so the first guy we're to talk about is Rah Thomas. If you don't know him, he was a wide receiver for both Mississippi State and Georgia. Coming out of high school in Alabama, Rah Thomas kind of went under the radar. He ended up catching 55 passes for 945 yards and 13 touchdowns, and that was his senior year. He was both a football and basketball star and would commit to Mississippi State as a 3-star recruit. He'd arrive in Starkville in 2021, appearing in 10 games and finishing the year with 18 catches for 252 yards and 5 touchdowns. 2022, though, would be his big year as he broke out, catching 44 passes for 626 yards and 7 touchdowns. Because of that, he decided to enter the transfer portal and became one of the top wide receivers in the entire portal. Georgia grabbed both him and Dominic Lovett and expected Rah to become a huge draft prospect and a huge star for the Dogs. In 2023, he'd play in 11 of 14 games, but had a disappointing year, finishing with 23 catches for 383 yards and a touchdown. Going into 2024, many were expecting Rah Thomas to be one of the top players on the team, and he could potentially get his way back into the NFL draft discussion. Sadly though, he'd throw his career away in the worst way possible, as he was kicked off the football team. Kirby Smart said, quote, "He can no longer be a part of the football team, he understands that, and we wish him the best moving forward." He was charged with violence, and I don't want to speak about that stuff until all the details come out, as I would not want to slander his name. But either way, he ended up being kicked off the team, and it seemed like there was some mischief going on there. Rah Thomas went from a guy who could have been a day 2 or day 3 selection to probably now never making it to the NFL. It's unfortunate his stock has dropped like this. Okay, our second guy is Andrew Makuba. Going back in time, he actually grew up in Zimbabwe and would eventually immigrate to Austin, Texas when he was just 9 years old. He'd eventually become a football star at Lyndon B. Johnson High School and would end up blowing up so much that he ended up taking his talents to Clemson over LSU and Texas. Makuba was a huge deal as he was nearly ranked inside the top 200 recruits in the class of 2021. Makuba would arrive at Clemson in 2021 and finish with 47 tackles, 6 pass deflections, and 1 sack. Because of that, he was named the ACC Newcomer of the Year and also a third-team All-Conference selection. Over the next 2 years, Makuba would continue to be a star for the Tigers, finishing with 53 tackles in 2022 and 42 in 2023. He combined for 9 pass deflections in those 2 years, and according to NFL Mock Database, he was actually ranked as high as a top 60 prospect, and at one point I saw him going in the first round in some mock drafts. Unfortunately, Makuba would end up making a mistake as he would enter the 2024 transfer portal and go over to Texas. So far in 2024 and half a season, Makuba has 19 total tackles and only 2 pass deflections. He went from a guy who was supposed to be the dude to now having a free fall in terms of his NFL draft projection. He went from a guy who was supposed to potentially go in the first 2 rounds to now probably being a day 3 or undrafted selection. It's unfortunate to see. At number 3, we have Jaylen Daniels, the quarterback from Kansas. Okay, so Daniels may not have gone in the first round, but he definitely would have been selected in the 2025 draft. At this point, you probably know his story, as he was just a 2-star recruit coming out of the class of 2020, and he ended up going to Lawndale High School. Pretty much nobody thought this guy would ever succeed, but Daniels would then take over in 2021, having that crazy 2-point conversion win over Texas, and then a hot start in 2022, finishing with over 2,000 yards and 18 touchdowns. He was seen as one of the best quarterbacks going into 2023, but would eventually get hurt and was replaced by Jason Bean. Many thought he could hopefully right in the ship in 2024, but so far through just a couple of games, Kansas has thrown away whatever hype they had, and he only has 1,000 yards with 7 touchdowns and 8 picks, and his draft stock is pretty much dead. You could probably blame it on their new scheme and new offensive coordinator, but Jaylen Daniels has had a fall from grace, and it's really sad. Blame injuries, blame new scheme, or maybe he was just overrated, I don't really know, but Jaylen Daniels' chances of being drafted feels pretty close to 0 at this point. Another interesting player who I think deserves a feature in today's video is Malachi Moore, a defensive player from Alabama, coming out of Hewitt-Trussville High School in Alabama. It feels like Moore has been playing forever, as he was a 4-star recruit back in the class of 2020, as he had 83 tackles with 5 TFLs as a senior back in 2019. He went to Bama over Arkansas, Auburn, and Georgia, and so far in Moore's 5-year career, he's actually put up pretty big numbers. In 2020, he got off to a hot start as a freshman, finishing with 44 tackles with 6 pass deflections and 3 interceptions, and honestly, Moore has not come close to that ever since. He did have 5 pass deflections in 2022, he had 51 tackles in 2023, but has never been able to really put it all together. That's why Malachi Moore continues to come back each and every year and is on his final year of eligibility. As a senior in 2024 so far, he has 33 tackles with 4 pass deflections, but has yet to record a sack, fumble, or interception. His biggest moment so far was in the Vanderbilt game, as he was going berserk and yelling towards the Alabama sideline, and even threw his mouth guard across the field as they were losing. Honestly, I do kind of admire that sort of passion, as if I was about to lose to Vanderbilt, I'd be that mad as well. But this is not helping Malachi Moore, who went from a guy who was projected to be a first-round pick after his great freshman season to now not being able to do much in his next 4 years. This is kind of sad, and we might see him fall off even more here soon. The 5th guy we need to talk about is JT Tuimoloau. Everyone's been raving about this guy for years now, but Tuimoloau is starting to fall off. He went from a guy who was supposed to go in the top 15 or top 20 to now falling to the 2nd round. His free fall will likely continue, as he's just not been able to put up great stats this year. But going back in time, Tuimoloau was a huge deal, as he was the Polynesian Player of the Year and was listed as a 5-star recruit coming out of Eastside Catholic High School in Washington. He actually reclassified and went to Ohio State, and the 6'5" monster took over right away, as in 2021 he had 17 tackles. His best season came in 2022, as he finished with 28 tackles, 4 pass deflections, 3.5 sacks, and 2 interceptions, and he even had a defensive touchdown. While he did improve to 5 sacks in 2023 though, I guess he wasn't good enough to make the jump to the 1st round, so he decided to come back for the 2024 college football season. He's joining an absolutely loaded defensive unit, and that's probably the biggest reason why his stock is falling right now. He does have 3 sacks so far, but many see Tuimoloau falling to the 2nd or 3rd round instead of being a 1st-round pick. I'm not at all saying this guy isn't good, as I know Ohio State fans may get mad down in the comment section below, but JT has not necessarily lived up to that hype he had coming out of high school, and only having 12 tackles through the first half of the season is a little bit disappointing. The 6th guy we need to talk about is Xavier Wampa from Iowa. I remember a couple of years ago when Wampa would flip from Ohio State to Iowa, and this was one of the biggest recruiting pull-offs in Iowa Hawkeyes football history. He ended up going to Southeast Polk High School in the state of Iowa, which is why he would end up flipping to the Hawkeyes. And this guy was awesome as he played both offense and defense. Wampa would arrive in 2022 for the Hawkeyes and would finish with 12 tackles with 1 pass deflection and an interception that ended up going to the house. In 2023, Wampa would break out, finishing with 42 tackles with 2 pass deflections and a sack. Because of that, Wampa was flying up draft boards. He'd be eligible after this year, and according to NFL Mock Database, he was actually ranked as high as the 45th overall prospect back in July. Well, right now he has dropped off tremendously, as so far halfway through the year, Wampa has just 11 tackles, and he doesn't even have a pass deflection or an interception. He's been extremely disappointing so far, as they've just not thrown the ball his way, and he's just not been all that good. At this point, it's generous to say that Wampa will even be drafted, or that he will even declare. I'm not quite sure what is going on, but he went from a guy who was supposed to go in the 2nd round with a ton of hype, to now maybe falling out of the draft entirely. This is sad to see. For our 7th guy, we need to talk about Antoine Wells Jr. At the beginning of the season, Wells was seen as a 2nd round pick, but has sort of had a free fall so far. That is due to various reasons. Coming out of Richmond, Virginia, Wells had pretty much no offers coming out of high school, but would decide to go to James Madison. He ended up combining for over 2,000 yards and over 100 catches during his time with the Dukes, and he brought his 21 touchdowns to South Carolina. In 2022, he became the main weapon for Spencer Rattler, finishing with 68 catches for 928 yards and 6 touchdowns. Many were expecting him to make a huge jump in 2023, but unfortunately he only had 3 catches for 37 yards and a touchdown, and many believed he sat out of the rest of the season because he was going to transfer. South Carolina fans are not big fans of Wells, and he decided to go to Ole Miss. So far in 2024, Wells has 17 catches for 371 yards and 4 touchdowns, and while those numbers really aren't that bad, considering the logjam of receivers he's in, he just really hasn't been able to put things together over these last 2 years, and combining last year's nonsense, Wells Jr. is starting to fall a lot in the draft. I think scouts aren't seeing enough from him, and it just feels like he's going to be one of those guys that falls to the 5th or 6th round, instead of going in the 2nd round where he really could have gone. Maybe I'm completely off the ball here, but it feels like Antoine Wells has just fallen off. I think DJ Uyunglele is going to break the record for the guy who's most featured on my YouTube channel, as I feel like I've talked about him over 100 times in probably 50 different videos. Sadly, DJ has seen an insane drop off, as when he was in the class of 2020, he was the second best quarterback behind Bryce Young. He obviously had that hot start at Clemson in that Notre Dame game, but 2021 and 2022 would not go according to plan. 2021 was a complete disaster, and 2022 just wasn't all that great. He transferred to Oregon State, where he had a decent year in which he had 2,600 yards and 21 touchdowns, but instead of coming back for one more year at the Beavers or going to a school that actually fit his scheme, DJ decided to pick one of the worst situations possible and went to Florida State. He went to a system that didn't fit his needs, they lost all their top targets, and there was no reason for him to go to that kind of level. So far in 2024, DJ has been horrible, as he's completed 53% of his passes for 1,000 yards with 4 touchdowns and 6 picks, but more importantly, he could not get the offense moving, has seemingly lost all of his confidence, and any shred of draft stock that was left is now gone. He'll be lucky to even get an undrafted free agent deal, and honestly, the rise and fall of DJ is a very sad story, and for his sake, I do hope he figures it out by the end of 2024, and maybe has some sort of crazy last 6 games. It's probably not looking likely, but for now, DJ Uyunglele has seen an insane stock drop. So yeah, today we talked about 8 more players whose stock has dropped off in 2024, and what do you guys think? Is there a player I forgot to mention? Do you think I was completely wrong about one of these prospects? And who in your opinion has had the biggest fall off in 2024? Be sure to let me know down below, leave a like if you support today's video, subscribe if you're new, and check out all my other videos on the end screen. I hope to see you guys again soon, but until next time, peace.